We have a quorum, it's 8:30. Let's go ahead and call the.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Let's call the Thursday, March 12th, 2026 Utility Policy Committee meeting to order. First item is to set the agenda, and I want to thank Member Chamberlain for the suggestions on some tweaking to the template for the agenda to include the director's report. So that's what we have this morning, and see how that all works. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
I'll support.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is introduction and guests. I think we are all known here and online. We do have a number online. Maybe we should just go around quickly.
Peter Hefner, and I represent the Regional Commission.
John Crum with Regional Commission.
James Baker, I'm the City Kalamazoo Public Services Director and City Engineer. I'm a staff member, not a board member.
Mark Elliott, alternate from the townships.
Libby Heine-Cogswell, Chair, and from the Regional Commission as well.
David Anderson, City of Kalamazoo.
Jeff Chamberlain, one of the City of Kalamazoo representatives.
Anna Moore, Public Works, Oshtemo Township.
Steve Vicente, City CFO.
Anna Crandall, City Kalamazoo Assistant City Engineer.
Thank you. And then online, this is always a bit awkward. We have Brett Pagic from Comstock Township, Babcock K, Kellen Lang, Supervisor McFarland O'Rourke, Texas Township, Joe Bonholm, City Kalamazoo, Carrie Lynn, owner, and Valletta Sellers Evans, City of Kalamazoo, and another unknown phone number. Thank you all for joining this morning. Any public comment?
Do we accept the minutes?
Oh. No, we did not. Okay, thank you. Next item is acceptance of the January 8th, 2025 minutes.
So move.
Support?
2026 draft
Good point.
minutes.
Yeah.
There's a motion by Mary Anderson, second by Member Hefner to accept the minutes of January 8th, 2026. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's 5-0 and 1 absent. No, 6-0 and 1 absent. It's early. Okay, next item, public comment. Anyone present wishing to make comment this morning? Hearing none, we will continue with item number 6, the director's report. There's items A through F. I'll leave it to you, James, how you want to walk through those.
Sure, in your packets, there's a document labeled Director's Report, and there's also a document labeled Asset Management Report. So I'll just kind of talk through those. These are annual reports provided by staff specific to the drinking water system. And so there's a lot of figures and tables and charts, so I'll kind of walk through that. So just kind of stepping through the Director's Report, the first section talks about the water supply, pumpage rates, how much we pump from different districts, how much we pumped in general across the entire system. I want to draw your attention to one of the tables. It's a chart, looks like this. It references production totals over the last 20 years and what those trends look like. If you look at where those spikes occurred, there was a spike around 2007, around 2012, and then you see kind of this continuous growth as that chart goes off towards the right. Those spikes in 2007 and 2012 were water production during drought years or years with hot, dry summers. So we anticipated a lot of flow then for irrigation. But you see where our results were in 2023 and where our results were in 2025 is that we're meeting those production in normal years. And if you look at kind of the slope of the line overall, you see that this is kind of like baseline flow. So from a baseline flow, our system is flowing more water, really than it ever has in the past. And that's going to speak to a lot of the investments that we're programming in CIP and that we need to be looking at, things like well fields, things like station, production, capacity, because with our base flows up as high as they are, if we do have a drought year like we had in 1988, or we had in 2007, or we had in 2012, we're going to expect to see more production from the system, more than we are right now. Flipping through, looking at some other statistics, we really track water quality complaints. We track those by district,
A
so.
couple of questions before you
Yes,
get.
yes, sir.
So, we haven't had a vast increase in population in Kalamazoo County necessarily. What is driving this? Are we just serving more people?
Sure, we are, maybe from a population increase, we're not seeing dramatic increases, but we are seeing year-over-year increases in customer base, connections to city water. We continue to see new connections in Richland Township. We continue to see new connections in Oshtemo Township, new connections in Texas Township. So the system is growing.
Okay.
System's also growing in response to contamination, things like the Kale landfill, PFAS contamination in the east. And we do have a lot of single-family home builds, new builds going on in Texas that are kind of fueling more consumption, more use of the system.
Got it.
There's also commercial and industrial uses that are, good users of the water system that are demanding more baseline flows and using more water. So maybe not direct to population, but there is more usage going on within the system. Jumping ahead to water quality complaints, that's something that, we take very seriously. All of these water quality complaints, if you've got a complaint with water quality, please give us a call. Please call 301 or 337-8000. We track that. These are reported to Eagle, and we always strive to have a successful result to resolve the water quality complaint. Most of these are high iron. We're a groundwater system. Of the 13 treatment plants that we have in our treatment system, we only have 2 treatment plants right now that have iron removal. We're building kind of a third treatment plant that actually takes 2 plants, 5 and 14, combines them together and provides treatment. So we are increasing our iron treatment in the system, but there are portions of the system that don't have it. And you can look by district and you can see that there's more complaints in super high and more complaints in high than any other district. And that is primarily.
West.
That's the high kind of surrounds the outer ring, which would be like 131 and I-94 corridor. Super high is west of that. So these are districts that are more towards the west or west and south of the city proper. Going through the report, there's all sorts of statistics and data points on repairs and just the work we do. I wanted to highlight our progress with water meter change-outs. We're about 30% of the system complete. We gain about 5% every year. We would anticipate that if we continue, with our progress and maybe increase that progress a little bit, that will be about 50% complete at the end of 2027. So that's something that we want to continue to focus on. Water main breaks, 2025 was our highest year. We ended the year with something like 134 water main breaks, I believe. And you can look from a bar chart perspective, you can see that it took the winner circle across all the years going back. 2026, as it starts out, we're only a few months in, is looking very positive. We don't have near the numbers that we had in 2025. If we go back to 2025 in February, where, we were midway through February and 45 days into the year, we were at 54 water main breaks. So we were outpacing days of the year with water main breaks last year. We're not seeing that this year, and we saw a much more severe winter this year as compared to last year. So, it's probably too early to say where things are going. Usually we like to look at these trends for several years in a row, but it does appear that all of our work that we're doing with cast iron main replacement and water main lining is really starting to pay off and starting to help with that program. Jumping ahead, lab analysis, we've got all the data on all the samples we run. I'm gonna keep flipping ahead here to the asset management report. The asset management report is put together in a format that's required by Eagle. So we're speaking to some items that Eagle is very interested in and wants to know specifically. We talk about staffing. There are 82 staff members in the water system last year. We had a lot of maintenance and inspections that focused on tanks and towers and wells, so those are all detailed. We've got some studies underway that we wanted to mention. One of those studies is continued work on well and well field rehabilitations. We got about $5 million in the capital improvement program right now that's been kind of planned for well rehabs. We continue to work through a design to identify, of the 90 so many wells that we have in the city, what wells are the highest priority to be rehabbed. And then that process to rehab or replace a well is pretty involved and requires kind of a two-step permitting process. So as we slog through that design, we anticipate to come out of the other side of that with some well consolidation. So it's our goal to take 30 wells and abandon them and drill 10 new wells with higher capacity. And where we do that, it's gonna have a lot of design and engineering behind it so that it makes the most sense for the system. And that's something that, like we talked about early on with the capacity, we need to really focus on that and make sure that we've got sufficient capacity for years into the future. The report goes into details.
Hey, Jim, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
New well, so what size well are you drilling when you drill a new well?
So most of the wells, on average, and each one's slightly different, but on average, most of our system has wells that range between 350 and 550 gallons a minute. And so the concept is, if we abandon 30 350 gallon a minute wells and replace those with 10 1,000 gallon a minute wells, or 10 1,100 or 1,200 gallon a minute wells, that we would have less numerical number of wells, so less wells to rehab and maintain over the life, but we'd have the same capacity, and then we would also have better hydraulic range within the same well. So, we have things such as VFDs, variable frequency drives on motors, so that instead of just having 350 gallons a minute in a well and then having to add another well online, if our use went higher than that, we'd have a single well that would give us a broader range.
Are we in an area where we worry about aquifers going down or anything like that as we're pumping, or is there got so much water here that that's not a problem?
So certainly we're looking at aquifer performance. Broadly speaking, aquifer, there's a few different aquifers that we're pulling from, but if we took all the aquifer capacity of our system, it's something near 150 million gallons a day. Our system capacity in terms of what we can pump out of the ground and put into the system is somewhere around 40 million gallons a day. So there's plenty of aquifer capacity out there. It's just a matter of getting it out of the wells. And then, as we look across where all the stations are, some properties may be more supporting additional wells. You know, some of these properties, we'll use Station 12 for an example, that's on Stadium Drive. It's kind of sandwiched between some commercial areas. It doesn't really have room for us to add more wells. Central has some room. We're making some property acquisitions that have come to City Commission. Those have been public. And our goal at Central is to add some more wells. So you can see there might be a little bit of a different approach at different well fields. We have a lot of property out west, El Sabo, 740 acres. We're looking at, could we have more wells out there? You know, could we use some of that capacity out there and, you know, some of that breathing room, so to speak, that we've got to utilize some more capacity and move that throughout the system. So there's a lot of detailed work happening in that design, and part of the reason why that's such a slog to get through that design, to get this work out, to do that well rehab. The report summarizes, you know, capital dollars, investment, that sort of thing. I'll pause there on those aspects of the work that's happening. I know Peter's got some more detailed reports on the financial aspect of it, so I'll take any questions, you know, anybody may have related to, you know, the work and the things that we're doing.
I just had a question. When I was looking through the report, I could see like this district or this area would be more water. This one was less. The station consolidation project, have you like slowed things down where they're doing that work? And then, you know, just replace it with a different area? You know, it'll give you like high, low, you know, super high. Or has that had no impact so far? It's kind of a new thing and it'll just be connected.
So, no, that project has started, the construction has, but the construction is occurring kind of outside of the system. So existing Station 14, existing Station 5 are gonna run, and they're gonna kind of power that system for the next 3 years until the new plant is turned on. So that new plant won't be turned on, that new plant won't impact these numbers until 2029 to 2030 timeframe. So all the numbers that you see in all the systems right now are all the existing stations. The new 5 and 14 won't impact these numbers until 2029, 2030
Okay.
timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you see on here, like this one is up, it's really just a matter of where does it make sense to be producing water, or there's a well that needs fixing or what have you.
Correct, and there's the ongoing kind of maintenance and operation of these stations. The stations do provide some redundancy to each other. We do also have the ability to move water within the districts and through districts to other districts. So there's a station can go offline and not necessarily impact the numbers, but the system doesn't have 100% redundancy. So we can't take every station off and have, you know, something that's going. So there is, like Central, for example, is pretty critical. Central can go down. We do take it down for maintenance. We have other stations that can support it, but Central is essentially our mother load station, and it can't be down for too long, or, you know, we're gonna have some challenges. But overall, the system has redundancy and is able to kind of support itself while stations are taken out for maintenance.
Thank you.
James? This is just kind of more a generic question. I don't know if you would know this off the top of your head, but any idea kind of split between like residential users and non-residential users of the system? So like if we're pumping 30 million gallons, you know, is it 90% going to residential and 10% going to non-residential, or?
You know, that's a good question. I know we have the numbers. I don't have them committed to memory.
It's all right.
It is not as dramatic as wastewater. So in wastewater, there's a pretty dramatic split between the industrial use and residential use. In drinking water, it's not that dramatic. So we've got kind of residential, single family, we've got multifamily, we've got commercial, and then institutional and industrial. So we could tell you what those breakouts are, I just don't have them committed to memory.
It's very possible that's in the audit. There's a lot of water statistic stuff, meter size and that kind of stuff. So I was gonna pop it up, but I don't think I'll get there.
It's okay.
Just one quick little question. Is there, you know if it's scheduled for this director's report to come to the city commission? Have you?
Those haven't come to the city commission.
No, they haven't, yeah.
We can engage with the city manager to see if that's something the commission would like to
I think
see
it'd be
from time to time. You know, it's part of this meeting, so you know,
Yeah.
it's public here. But certainly we could bring those to commission as well.
I'm gonna
I'll
go.
pass it to you, Peter.
Yeah. So within your packet, you have, in the printed version, and it was in the PDF we received, there's financial information by line item. And so what I've historically been doing is on a quarterly basis, I receive this report from James and his staff, and then I just summarize it because I hopefully you feel like it's easier to consume when it's not, you know, line after line. I think there's probably 35 pages of information, but what I put together is something that looks like this. And the first page of this document, and it's two-sided, is just looking at the 2025 budget, the 2025 actual through 12/31, which wouldn't necessarily include year-end accruals. They're preparing for the audit, I suspect. And it's just comparing at the department level or cost center level, what is the actual expenditures, what are the actual revenues? And these line items on the left where it says, or summary on the left where it says expenditure 536, that is captioned within the report you have as water and sewer system. 537 is captioned utility inventory control. So if you go to the report that is very detailed, you should be able to see a total there, and it should be fairly consistent with this. I got this report information after our last meeting, and so depending on what day they printed the report, there's accruals going on at the end of the year, things of that nature. But I highlighted in yellow the totals for what I think are logical categories of expenditures or revenues. So on the far right, you'll see that there were budgeted what I refer to as operations expenses or expenditures, budgeted at $25 million, came in at 19.4, so 77% of the budget. I suspect that we should be well within the budget after the accruals are done at year end. And that's just what I suspect, but a lot of margin there. And when we take a look at working our way down, you can see capital totals budgeted almost $200 million, $34 million expended, and I don't know at what point capital items are moved from an expenditure into a capital asset category, but again, you know, well within the budget. Debt service, right on target at 100% of what was budgeted. And then when we work our way down, we get to the revenues, and I usually just look at I look at them all, but I look at the first category there where I put utility operations revenue subtotal. 95% of budgeted revenue was recorded through the date of the reports that we received. So right, very close to target. And then when we get down to this capital category, it's really dependent on what was bonded, what were the grants, things of that nature. So I really focus on the operating revenue and the operating expenses, and they appear to be, you know, expenditures are well within budget. Revenues are very close to target at 95%. And that's comparing budget to actual for 2025 before the year-end accruals and the things that the finance department is addressing. Yes.
So just a couple of questions about this. Once again, I think I said this before, it is very, very helpful. Thank you for pulling this out, kind of throwing this into categories. I know it's, like you say, there's some adjustments have to be made. But is there any message that we can derive out of looking at this? I mean, for example, I know there's whole timing issues on capital, but are we not prepared to execute on the capital side, like we would like to, seeing how our capital expenditures are so much lower than budget? And what does that mean about timing of selling bonds and all that sort of thing?
Sure. I don't have that answer. Maybe James could tune in, or we have a guest in the gallery.
Yeah, I think
that
certainly
knows
between
too.
Steve and I, we can, so, first off, from a high level, in water, we also do this for wastewater. We only, budget from a bonding standpoint to fund 75% of projects. So if there's $100 million CIP and that's approved in the budget through city commission, from a bond sales perspective, Steve and I are only planning to fund 75% of it, so 75 million of that. And then that kind of kicks the projects off. And then once the projects are kicked off, funded at 75%, many projects have 2 or 3 year build outs. So that 75 million isn't gonna be expensed in that year that you're in. So everything is kind of flowing into the future. There's some additional noise, I'll call it, when we bring in DWSRF. Those are like the state grants, programs and things like that make the numbers look, a little bit more squirrely, so to speak. There are, times when certain projects are held up maybe a little bit longer than we'd like. I talked about some of the well field projects where we've got 5 million in CIP that's just kind of been sitting there for a year or two, and we'd like to see it go, into new wells. So there's those real aspects about the projects as well. So, overall, certainly we're aware of that. There is some kind of mechanics to getting the work out onto the street, and some things Steve and I are doing to, smooth that out. I'll pause there and let Steve weigh in on maybe some more details on the financial aspect of that.
Yeah, so I'll, just kind of speaking to the $200 million number. So as we know, we had a $100 million DWSRF project. So that's one project in that budget that we have no bonds for on hand. They get reimbursed from the state as we complete the project. So that's a huge portion of it. Another huge part is that $200 million is also the accumulation of everything we've previously approved that's in progress. So we have the 25 capital plan plus carryover from 24, maybe some of those projects from 22, 23 finishing up. So, those numbers look quite large. From our perspective, we budget similar to how we do for any governmental expenses, that the budget has to be there for James's team to actually be able to go out and spend it. So we have to budget 100% of those projects, even though financially we're planning a 75%, completion rate. And then DWSRF, I think, if you don't pull that out separately, it really kind of skews that whole number on the completion rate and how much bonds we have on hand.
So,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for big projects, do we sell bonds incrementally over time, knowing that, we're starting this as a 5-year project? Or do we literally sell our 75% expectation, in one?
We do it all in one swoop every year.
Yeah.
We do go through a full analysis. So typically our bonds are sold, September, October timeframe for the current year. So we already have a built-in 9-10 month buffer to where I'm already working with James this year on, hey, these are our carry forwards, this is the current capital. Should we be changing the 75% or bringing changes to that as we move forward? Because if he says, well, yeah, we have this $20 million project, but EPA just delayed it for 3 years, so let's pull that out. And then we can make those adjustments as we go. So
Yeah.
That's where, as we go to commission, because the bond process takes a minimum of 3 months, we'll come forward with a notice of intent of saying, okay, we want to bond $75 million this year. James and I might work through and come back, actually, we only need 50 million.
Yeah.
We've made those adjustments in the past as we kind of get into the year and see where things are going through construction season.
We can invest our bond sales proceeds while we're waiting to spend it, is that right?
Yes, so we can earn, investment income up to the interest rate on the bonds.
Yeah.
Before having to pay back anything above and beyond that to the IRS.
Yeah, okay.
So, I would typically say, where we've been tracking the last couple of years is somewhere roughly around an 18-month turnover on our bonds. Legally, we have 3 years, so being right in the middle of that's probably a pretty good spot that we don't have too much or too little as they kind of, go through a massive capital plan.
Sorry, thanks.
No, hey, that's great. My takeaway is that you got those projects coming from prior years, and you have what you think could happen, and then you have DSRF, that if you don't get funding, you don't do the project. And so on the capital side, there's just a lot of variables that we better understand after that discussion. So that's great, and it's a great question on the interest earned, because that's one of the big numbers on the coming pages as far as interest earned on bond proceeds. So I'm gonna flip the page, and this is just looking at the prior page's operating revenues and where did those dollars come from versus the budget. And so the things that I noted on here, do you see about 6 lines down where there is $1.4 million on interest on bond reserves restricted. And so I suspect that's bond reserves, but also could be bond proceeds awaiting expenditure, and they have to be set aside and used for the purpose of the bond or repayment of the bond, is my understanding. So that's the big interest number at the top of the page. And then I have pointed out in the past, if you look at a couple lines down, system capacity buy-in fee, $859,000, so pretty substantial, which was an amendment to the contract to have that fee that people connecting pay for their share of what was already in place. And again, we were fairly close to budgeted at 41 million, expended 39.5, or I'm sorry, revenue of 41 million and budgeted and actual revenue of 39.5. And you can see the in-city versus out-city. Near the bottom, it'll say standard meter inside city, outside city, or volume charges. It just gives you an idea of where are things occurring, where's the revenue flowing from. And on the next page, there is a summary of the information presented on the first page, which is revenues and expenditures, and it's comparing from 24 actual to 25 actual. The first page was 25 budget to 25 budget actual. And again, you can see there's a summary on the right trying to categorize things because James's group might be working diligently on one area, meters one year, and the next year maybe doing other things. So I look at it more of a summary level, and if there's a big variation, then I kind of drill down and try to understand what's occurring. And so on the far right, I just point out that 24 actual for what I would term the operating expenses. 24 was 18.6 and 25 was $19.4 million. And when we get to the next page, we'll understand some of that a little bit better. And then we can see debt service was up. That's 3 lines down on the yellow component. And it was right on budget, more debt outstanding, more debt service costs. And then you can see capital was up from the year before. And to some extent, again, that's based on when things get capitalized, and we're at the end of the year, so were there some of those entries at year end posted before? I don't know that. And then if you take a look at revenue, it went from operating revenue 36.7 million to 39.4 million from 24 to 25. So same data that's in the 35 pages, just more of a summary look at it. And then if you work your way down, you can see the capital financing, and you can see a negative number of $9.7 million. That's more of an accounting aspect of it. When are the bonds issued? Ultimately, when we see the audit, issuing bonds is not a revenue. It just ends up being a liability of the system. So there's accounting, and we're right at year end, and so there are some nuances in there that I kind of understand that it could be this or that. It didn't concern me. But by all means, ask questions should you like to. And if you look at the last page, that's a summary that I historically have provided, and it's just looking at 24 actual expenses and then 25. And this is, 24 is before the audit time, so it's just the same report that I requested. Based on the day they printed it, that's the 24 numbers, it's not audit numbers. And it's looking at expenses based on how I classify them. You can see capital outlay is up from the prior year. You can see chemicals are slightly down, and that could be adjusted for inventory at year end. Internal charges down slightly, debt service up, supplies up slightly, utilities up slightly, and then wages and benefits were up quite a bit, so I drilled down into that. And what I found, and I put a little note there, note 1, and below it I tried to at least point off for myself that there's a line in wages, and the big fluctuation is last year this line in wages was a negative. This year, it's $1 million positive, and I suspect that's could be year-end adjustments, like let's say for pension or OPEB liabilities or things of that nature. So it didn't really concern me. Looking at all the other lines, they were pretty much, if, you know, this one's slightly up, this one's slightly down, and I suspect that that's just where are the people working and what function are they performing this year. You know, less broken meters or broken lines may mean, you know, less time expended on that cost center. So I hope that's helpful to you. I'm happy to do it again. And if you feel more comfortable with the detail, it's there. I would just say, would you like me to do it again?
It's helpful for me.
Yes,
Okay.
very
I
much.
just don't want to waste your time or the money.
No,
or
this
whatever.
is really good, Peter.
Okay.
I appreciate the summary. The translation, I'll call it. Any other questions or comments on that? There was a request to have a monthly financial update. I don't know if we really need that or if the quarterly is sufficient. What are the thoughts of this group?
Well, I think on the agenda here, just kind of tweaking a bit, what we were looking at, just in talking with, you know, Steve Senzi and James Baker of, you know, that the city staff have all the raw data, and that, you know, that there's an opportunity for city staff to kind of present, coming directly from, you know, city staff, from the CFO, you know, here's where we are in finances, of making time for that. And then Peter, I think, you kind of in effect been tasked with is a little bit is summarizing and looking through and trying to find any highlights. So I think kind of the thought being the combination between the two
Okay,
of getting financial reports from city's financial people.
so, and as I think about it, Peter's looking back at the last quarter, so the monthly update could be the current year, what's?
Could be. Yeah, or if there's anything of highlight.
Yeah.
You know, if there's anything, you know, for example, we did or didn't get a grant, or there was, you know,
Or we issued $30 million worth
yeah,
of
they came out
bonds
last
or-
month, right?
So not necessarily a report, but a
Highlights.
verbal update.
Or James just awarded a $15 million contract or something. That could be, at least keep us educated. That would be great, I think.
I think the idea too was, internally, from the system standpoint, there are opportunities for quarterly reports, as far as how the system's working financially to keep track of it. Again, like was mentioned, that, you know, the bonds may not get issued until October. So again, or we might be hitting a peak season during the summer months. Of having a quarterly report that would kind of go into it a little bit more.
Okay. That sounds helpful.
Yeah, I'd just say, Jeff, that was my understanding of the discussions as well, that those kind of updates, so that we're always informed, but the quarterly reports and the summaries, I think, are getting into the details is sufficient once a quarter.
We covered a bit now. Is there anything in addition? I would ask CFO Vincenzi?
I guess, I would just share, we can, since we have the data, we can more easily manipulate probably what Peter's doing work on the side to do and bring this type of report forward fairly easily. He's taking it from a single report, doing a lot of data manipulation. We have the data, and I guess city staff has never been asked to do that work, but we're able to and willing to. We're paid by the system already, and we're here and ready to do the work that's asked of us.
I think what you could do would be prepare this report. I think your folks have the data. If you provided that to us on a quarterly basis, that's great.
We can do that. We can be prepared for that first quarter and the.
But yeah, so if you give us
implementation.
like this one that's 35 pages.
No, and those are the detailed reports, so we can pull some reports easily. To date, so far, James's public service team has been the one pulling these reports. We've talked, I think the finance team can grab different reports and have access to different tools that can do a lot of the work for us.
I would suggest that we go with the next quarter, have them put together this type of information, and when we can say, can you modify it or what have you? And they would know the answers as well, so if something's oddball, I've contacted James before and said, hey, there's something not right here. And it was like, oh, this has occurred, so we just need to change it or whatever, so. But yeah, I think that makes more sense than, and then we can all take a look at it, and if we have questions, we can have the city address it. It's their data. They know the answers, I don't. Other than I've got 30 years of experience looking at this stuff.
I think we're all in agreement. That makes sense to do. Thank you. Any other updates on this item 6?
Nothing further.
Was there something under C that we need to know about or not?
City commission actions. I think
Is that just an open?
that's still a carryover from the end of year city commission actions on the ordinance and the rates. And then we didn't have a meeting. Yeah, actually, it's in the minutes from January. We talked about that.
Okay.
The city commission adopted the 2026 rates.
Yeah.
And Tom gave an update on his attendance at the commission.
Yes.
Just, I think on the idea here too was just to make sure that the director and staff had time, so that if there's anything going on at the policy level, the city commission level, that there's kind of an opportunity to kind of make sure, even though it might not be specifically related to like buying whatever, or like the meters or something like that, that, let's say there's the city commission takes some action on something, but it affects water, or might affect that.
Sure.
There's at least a place that, we can do it, or if there's an item that came through, like the policy that needed to go to the city commission, that there's an opportunity to make sure we bring it back to the UPC to give you an update on it as far as what happened at the commission level.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
A lot of times there may just be nothing.
Okay. So these A through F will be on every agenda, and sometimes there'll be more information than others.
Right.
To share. That's my understanding, how we're gonna handle that item. Okay, item 7, unfinished business, the utility financial policy amendment. And as I read through the minutes, we had initial discussion that Peter was gonna develop something, and then there was discussion that the city would organize a,
Yeah, I thought we
meeting,
were gonna get
so-
together, or someone was gonna get together with Stantec, or formulate a meeting with Stantec, just to discuss that, the policy says X, and then you're making a calculation that's not that. But it may be likely better, in my opinion, the way they're doing it, so should we change our policy or should we suggest to the city commission to update the utility financial policy to more closely correlate with a more reasonable approach to calculating the reserve.
It's, my recollection was the discussion was we reached consensus to try to align the policy with what was happening, that we felt we needed to do that in one way, shape, or form, and that the people that needed to be in the room were Stan Tech and Steve and Peter, and that they would develop a proposal for that and bring it back here. And so I think that remains the same, it just hasn't happened yet. So we'll put that on the agenda for, what's next month, April.
Yeah, in the minutes it says there will be a meeting and information will be brought back. So we haven't had a meeting yet.
Okay.
Or there hasn't been a meeting.
Any other questions on that or comments? Okay. New business, the Carriage Estates petition. And I think Member Elliott, alternate member Elliott has an update on that.
Yeah, I think I have the details. I guess I was looking at it in preparation for this meeting as to what our current utility policy committee is, but I'll just kind of review my recollection of what discussion this committee has already had. There is an area of which township? Comstock, I was thinking it was Comstock, yes. Which is called the Carriage Estates area, and there have been some interest in extending water to that already existing development. And there's always been an issue of the difference in cost for extending public utilities in previously developed subdivisions that includes water and more specifically sanitary sewer, because the cost differential is quite significant. And the Utility Policy Committee has met several times and had several detailed discussions. We adopted a policy on this subject back in May of '24, and we, during that year, 2025, we had 2 more amendments to that. So it's something that's been on our agenda. We've looked at it in detail, and I think we all are very comfortable with it, including the city and all the customer townships as well. And I'll just go briefly through the various things that that we are tasked to do in considering those, such as those extensions. The first one is that we require the township to adopt either for a specific district or the township-wide an ordinance that requires that properties will connect to the public water system if they have a well failure that requires them to get a permit through the county health department to repair that well. That's the trigger that goes into effect for the mandatory connection. Until then, the townships and the residents are allowed to stay on their existing private well. So that's the first thing. That's how we get reimbursement into the utility system for the capital expenditure to put it in. So if there's an area where that is desired to do a project, require the township or the city to do a cost estimate, the township has already, as part of our utility policy, identified certain fees that will be necessary for an extension. The main thing is that those fees will cover approximately 30% of the cost for the project with the utility as a whole picking up the other 70%. So for evaluating that 30% fee, we have a extension which is referred to in our water service agreement, Appendix X, of a neighborhood extension fee of approximately $7,350. As they connect to the service, the residential customers also are required to pay for a standard fee to connect to the system from their house. And we've considered what's appropriate for that fee as well in our process. And also there's a capacity charge if you want a system buy-in fee, because the residents also benefit from the overall infrastructure that supports getting water to them, and that's currently $1,175. So the UPC then reviews these requests, and we have already reviewed the overall project cost estimated and endorsed proceeding with it. Then the township needed to see if they can get the petition issued. I understand the petition has been signed by over 50%. I don't know if we've got documentation from the city or from the township yet on that.
And I think that's the key change that this UPC should be aware of, is that from Tom, we've heard that they have a petition that was completed. And so they're moving forward with the project. And, but we don't have that in hand yet, so it would come back to this group at some.
And I don't think we have in hand the ordinance change required to set up the district. They probably
Yes.
haven't done that
So
yet.
so we're working through the steps
Right.
for the policy, and that's a big step to get the petition.
Yes. So we're not asking for any action, but it's proceeding along those lines, and those are the next two steps that are required before it does come back to the UPC for a decision. Final decision. Basically, we'll verify that those steps have been put in place.
And we have someone from Comstock Township?
Update from our end if you'd like.
Sure, Brett Patchett?
Yeah, so there's 3 residents, here, let me turn my camera on so you can see me, sorry. Hi, we have 3 residents from that neighborhood who are really pushing this, and they want to connect immediately as soon as it's done. So they're the ones circulating the petition. I don't know that they have 50%. They said that they think they can get 50%. That's where it is right now. So they're currently circulating, and then we just started working on the ordinance, and we're going to try to craft it so that we can have a base ordinance that requires mandatory connection if someone takes advantage of the neighborhood policy, and then just add the neighborhoods as they sign on. That's the current avenue we're taking. So no ordinance and no petitions yet, but both are underway.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else? Any questions? Thank you, Mark. Next item is the professional services invoices. Mayor?
Okay, in an effort to keep the meeting moving along then, I move approval and payment of 2 invoices from Hefner Group LLC. One is invoice 1104, the other one is invoice 1111. The previous one is the amount of $705.75, and the second one is the amount of $292.50.
I'll support. I'll second it.
Wait, we have 2 seconds.
Oh.
So I have a motion by Mary Anderson and a second by
Yes.
Member Crum to approve the two Hafner Group invoices as presented and described. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain?
Motion carries 5 yes, 1 absent, and 1 abstention.
I move approval of a Main and Meridian invoice number 00118 in the amount of $352.13.
I'll support.
We have a motion by Mary Anderson, second by John Crum to approve the Main Meridian invoice as described. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 5 yes, 1 absent, and 1 abstention.
I move approval of Prine and Newhoff invoice number 94114 in the amount of $533.50.
I'll second.
Motion by Mary Anderson, second by alternate Elliott, and to approve the Pine and Newhoff invoice as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6 yes and 1 absent. Thank you. Any committee member, alternate attendee guest comments? I'll start with Public Works Director Horner.
What's that, thanks?
Any comment online? Let's see.
Can you hear me, Libby? This is Joanne.
Yes.
So I'll just make one quick comment. I was doing a little math over here in Texas Township as you guys were meeting. So I don't know if this is helpful to look at where the population is growing in the county, but I follow census data pretty closely because Texas Township is expanding so quickly. So our population between 2020 and 2024, based on census, grew by about 30%. And then, but for the county as a whole, it grew about 1.5%. And, you know, the city is pretty flat because it's built out. And so some places are, you know, they're built out, so there's not much expansion possible. So again, I don't know if that's helpful for planning purposes or projections, but it's just something I note.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comment? Hearing none, well, let's see. Peter, any comment?
I would just suggest if you take a look at table 35 in that audit, it shows what the volume of water supply in-city, out-city type of entity. So if you want to delve in, there's a lot of data in there, 10 years worth. And there's like how many meters in city, out city, customers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of that data that there was an inquiry about, that it is there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Any comment, Mark?
I'll just throw out as a comment and maybe a suggestion. I tend to be on the geeky side, so the 78-page report, I flip through it. Obviously, I don't think it's necessary for a group of people on this committee, so I am comfortable with just the summary. But one of the things, being kind of geeky, you realize there are oftentimes square pegs going into round holes, and a lot of that is some of the statutory requirements for audit and accounting versus what we need is the clarity and understanding, which is why I really like the summaries that Peter put together, and I've oftentimes complimented Peter for that work, because I think it's very important, especially for a group like this, and the representatives of the public, because this is a public meeting. But I'll give you just one example of something that we're not going to see in that report, but it's in these documents and Joe's letter as well, is the comment that the city provided assistance to over 400 families who had financial difficulties for reduced income to assist in getting water into their homes. And that's so important. I think we need to get credit for that in the operation of this utility. That was a cost of over $400,000, but it was borne by the community in the public interest. And that's what this board is tasked with, is looking after the public interest. And that's one of those things that might get lost. And I don't want to lose that. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, any comment?
Not really a comment, much question. I'm not sure who has a copy of the final neighborhood policy we were just discussing regarding comments.
I think it's on the utility policy committee website at the city.
Okay,
With the
perfect. I
city.
know I've got the different amendments, but
And
I wanted to make sure I had the last one.
The dates on the policy from the city website, it has all the dates adopted and amended
Okay,
as well.
okay. I'll go back, take a look at that. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Anything?
Well, I have a question, I guess, question, not really within our purview, but just related to the other piece of this work, wastewater and whatever progress we're making there. I guess I'm just offering if there's any way that my participation could be helpful. I don't know exactly how all that's going, and if we're stuck, or if 2026 is going to be the banner year we can get this thing wrapped or not. But I guess that would be, if there's a way to
Thank you.
assist in making progress there. And I know
That
this
is-
isn't exactly the venue for that, but.
That is well noted, and I don't know at this point if that offer is helpful, but I am very optimistic. There is work, but I'm optimistic, so.
Thank you.
So, and I don't have any additional comments. I want to thank everyone for coming, attending this morning. And we have exhausted the agenda. So we are adjourned, and we'll meet again on April 9th.
Thanks, Libby. Thanks.
Yep.